Hey everybody, it's Sean here from Wilkins Power Sports, and today we're going to be doing something a little different. We've got our 2022 RZR 1000 XP. This is a Highlifter edition. We're going to be installing some Super ATV 2-inch forward offset A-arms, as well as a set of 35-inch tires. So we'll start over here and we'll unbox the A-arms and show you guys what you can expect when you open your Super ATV arm box. And this is very consistent with the packaging I've seen from Super ATV. So inside your box, you've got plenty of stickers. You've got your grease fittings, brake line holders and steering stops, as well as some new hardware. Some more hardware for tie rod ends. Additional heim joints for tie rod ends. This kit does come with upgraded tie rods, as well as you can see here, everything's really nicely packaged. Keep it all from getting scuffed up on its way to you. And here you can see the quality of the powder coat on the product. Nice, clean, high quality, really accurate color match on these. They're gonna look great. Be a lot stronger than factory. And also allow for the clearance of those 35s. I'm gonna go through and finish pulling these out, and I'll get back with you guys in a minute. So now that we've got everything unboxed, let's move on to the fun part. So we're gonna start here. We'll take an angle reading on our front wheel, just to get an idea of our camber while the front wheels are off the ground. That'll give us a ballpark, so when we're starting reassembly, we can go nice and smooth. It looks like we've got about 2 degrees of angle on the front wheels. If you don't have a fancy digital gauge to check the angle on your camber, that's fine. You can use a conventional needle style, and that works just as well. Let's start some disassembly. So in order to get the bolts out of the upper arms, the front bolts in particular, you have to remove the front fascia. And to do that on this unit, we have to remove the front bumper and the winch. As always, when working on any electric parts, we want to start by unhooking our battery. That way we don't risk shocking anybody. If you don't know, the battery on these RZR products is typically under the driver's seat unless you have a 4-seat on. Now with their battery unhooked, let's get the winch pulled. Now it's a good idea, if you don't know where these wires go, or don't think you'll be able to remember, to label these wires. Typically on your winches, you do have color coding on the outside. So you have a blue and a yellow to match your yellow wire and your blue wire. Now with our electrical components out of the way, we can go ahead and unplug our headlights. We can unplug our fang lights. Your fang light plugs are located right here behind the grille. You can unplug these after you remove the front fascia. I tend to do that. I tend to unplug them beforehand, just so that way they're not forgotten and you're not pulling on the wires if you're trying to remove the fascia. Now it's good practice when you're working with heavier parts, like bumpers with winches mounted on them. It's always good practice to leave your upper bolts installed and slightly loose when removing other hardware. That way the bumper doesn't fall off at you. As you guys can probably see, when I loosened these bottom 2 bolts up, the bumper did move. And that is because I already loosened the upper bolts. Around. Other side out. Just right off into the center. So your factory brake lines are going to be riveted to your A-arms. You'll have to go through and drill the rivets out in order to remove the brake line from the factory arm. The rivets may start to spin on you, so you might just have to, once you start getting them drilled, take a small chisel or a small punch and actually just tap the body of the rivet through the hole. A little tip for when you remove your brake calipers. These crown roll bags work really well to suspend your caliper, and then just the hook off a bungee cord to hang it up in place. It's just as simple as you slide your caliper into the bag, take your strings, and pick it right up out of the way. And that just keeps you from stressing this brake line. You don't want to stress your brake lines. Very important. From this point, you're ready to remove your arms. All our hardware is loose. Everything I just left finger tight. Take it all one piece at a time. Hub out of the way, all our carriers. We've got our sway bar unhooked here. I went through and pre-loosened all our arm fasteners when I could access them first. We're going to take all these parts and set them aside for the customer for later use if he does decide to put them back in. So from here, I'm going to take and remove our ball joints to reinstall in our other arms. This unit's really new and these ball joints have very low mileage on them, so we're just fine to reuse them. I'll catch back up with you guys when we're on reinstall. Now that we've got our ball joints installed, we're going to move on to prepping our arms for installation. I've already taken this side out and added some of our TorqueMaster anti-seize to it. What this is going to do is prevent these adjustable links from seizing up in the future in case you wanted to or had to readjust it. For the most part, once these are set, you're ready to go. So it's just as simple as we pull those out. Spray them with a little bit of goop. Thread them back in place. And then as we thread these back in, we've got some excess building up around the edge. So we want to wipe that clean. We want our jam nut to be able to make a nice solid contact against the arm. And we'll install our grease fittings. So I'm going to cut and go through and do all of my arms and all my adjusters, install all my grease fittings. Be sure to tighten your grease fittings so they don't back out. I'm going to do that off camera. So at this point, you've got your adjustments all lubricated, you've got your grease fittings installed. Now it's time for you to install arms. So we're going to start just by sliding the lower in here. The fitment on these can be a little tight. So just wiggle it, and shimmy it, and it should go right in. So I'm just going to take and throw my bolts through here. And then once we have everything aligned, I typically go back through and pull one bolt at a time, and we'll grease the bolts to make sure the bolts come out and for future service purposes. So for this, just take a little dab of grease on your finger and spread it down the bolt. And then be sure to get a little bit on the threads. You don't need to go too crazy because you don't want things to back out, but you want things to be able to come apart in the future. And all the grease is really there for is to help prevent corrosion. now nearing the point where we're going to be adjusting camber and bringing things into the correct alignment. So with our hardware loose, there is a little bit of wiggle room on these arms. So our camber adjustment isn't going to be perfect, but it's nice to leave them loose. So that way if you do have to make an adjustment, you can just remove the hardware and everything easily. It's not tight, it's not gonna fight you. Reinstall these. I'm also gonna reinstall these loose. Just again for ease of adjustment if I have to remove anything. So as you guys can see here, we've got our A-arms all installed. I've roughed in our angle to be approximately the same as it was with the factory arms with the suspension at droop. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna go through and we're gonna set the unit down, we'll do a toe adjustment, bring everything into the proper angle. And once we set it on the ground, we'll recheck our camber to make sure our camber is right in the ballpark of where we wanna see it. Now, to check your camber and set your toe, you want your unit at ride height. So what we're gonna do after we set it down, because the tires have held us up to some portion, is we're gonna bounce the front end to try to lower it down where it needs to be so you're at your approximate ride height. What can sometimes help as well is to basically put your unit in neutral and roll it forward and backwards slightly. And that just allows the tires to scrub out and allows the suspension to settle in place. As you can see here, we've got our 35s installed. I got an extra set of hands. Got our front end aligned. And from here, it's just reassemble the nose and you're all set. You're ready to ride.